Hi everyone, welcome back to your YouTube channel Zero Analyst. If you're thinking of learning Python or if you're already learning Python, you may have come across this modules of Python which is called loops in Python. Now we have two types of loops in Python which is called for loop and while loop. And you may have got confused with for loop and while loop. Now this is a very important modules of Python and you should definitely know when to use for loop and when to use while loop and what is the exactly difference between while loop and for loop. This is the reason I have decided to make a detailed video to explain the difference between for loop and while loop. In this video we're going to solve 5 problems with while loop and for loop. Let's go ahead and start the video. If you see, we're going to solve all these 5 problems using for loop and while loop. Let's first understand what is for loop and what is while loop. Then we will see when to use for loop and when to use while loop. If you see, I have created a list which is here called fruits, and if I run it, it's a list of 3 items, right? Now, if I need to iterate through each items, right? First, I would need to print apple, then I would need to print banana, and then I would need to print mango, right? So if you see, we know we have 3 items in this. Now, if you want to print each of this item, that means you want to iterate through each of this item. That's where you can use a for loop. Now using a for loop, what you can do is that first you can print these items, then you can print the second item, then you can print the third item. So in each iterations, for loop is going to basically print one items. The way you remember for loop is that whenever you have a sequence of data, let's say series, or it's a sequence of items like list or maybe tuples where you have multiple items, right? And you want to iterate through each of the items, that's where you will be using for loop. Now I'll be giving an example. Let's say I would say for items in fruits. Okay, now I can simply go ahead and say print items, right? So let's understand what is happening here. Okay, so first I'm saying, hey, for items in fruits, that means we have 3 items, and then I'm saying print item. So this item is going to hold the first item's value, which is from this list fruits, because I'm saying items in this, right? So that means whatever the items I have, this items is going to hold the first item. So I'm saying print item. So it's going to print the first item. Then after it prints, it goes back to the item and it gets the second item. Then this item becomes the second item, and then it prints, and then it goes to the third item, and then it prints. Okay, so for example, if I go ahead and run it, if you see, I am having apple, banana and mango, right? So this is for loops. So for loop is very simple. It simply iterate through each items of a sequence, series or list. Okay, now when you talk about while loop, which is little different than for loop. So while loop will work based on a condition. If the condition is true, it is going to execute for forever. Till the time the condition doesn't become false, it will not stop. Okay, so let's go ahead and see a condition, and then let's see what we can do using while loop. Let's say I want to print greetings, which is called hello, right? So I would just go ahead and say maybe greetings. Let's create a greetings variable, and I can simply go ahead and say hello, welcome, right? So I'm just saying hello, welcome. It's a simple string, and what I can do is that I can use a while loop to print this for n number of time. Let's for infinite number of times. So all I need to do is that I need to simply say while, and I need to give a condition here. Now it is very important. This condition must be true. While the condition is true, it is going to keep printing this whatever it is, right? It is going to keep executing the block of code. So I can make a condition. So here you can simply write true. Okay, because true is always true, right? And you can simply say once it is true, and then you can say print what you want to print is going to be this greetings. Okay, so if you see, it will keep on printing again and again and again, and it will never stop because this true will never become false, right? So if I just execute it, if you see, it is printing, right? Hello, hello, welcome, hello, welcome, hello, welcome. So here, considering here if you compare with for loop and while loop, in while loop it depends on the conditions. Okay, and in for loop it depends on the number of items. It simply get one by one item and it iterate through each item. So here it doesn't iterate through any items. It doesn't care whatever we have. It simply goes based on this condition. If this condition is true, all the code that we have here, which is one indentation inside this while loop, is going to be execute, and they will keep on execute. Basically first it will clear all the kind of code, and then it will check the conditions again, then it will clear again one. That means it's going to run all the code again, and it will keep on going because this condition would never become false till the time you don't cancel it. Okay, let's say 5. Okay, and I can here go ahead and say that while I is I can say less than equals to, and I can just go ahead and say maybe greater than equals to. Okay, well I is, let's say, greater than equals to maybe 5. Okay, let's say that in I have kind of 1, and I'm saying I is while I is less than equals to, sorry, I would say while I is less than equals to, you need to make sure when you are making condition, the condition must, mean something, right? The condition must be true. So you can give a negative condition, you can give a positive conditions, right? So here we are saying, okay, we're saying in I we are storing 1, and then we're saying while this 1 is less than equals to 5. So if you see right now, this condition is true. Why? Because I is 1 and 1 is always less than equals to 5, correct? So it will print greetings. Okay, now if I run it, it will keep on again printing greetings because it will always be true, these conditions, right? Now what I can do is that I can, after printing it sometime, I can change the value. Okay, what I can do is that I can change the value I to something else, right? So I can go ahead and say that here I equals 10. So once it prints greeting only once, this will not print greeting second time because the I value will be not, I mean these conditions will not be true anymore, right? But as soon as it executed I is 1, it check, okay, 5 is kind of I is kind of less than equals to 5. Yes, this condition is true. It's going to execute this code, and then I value I am just changing it, so it is not going to kind of print for the second time. You see, it has only printed for one time. So second way, I can use an incremental operator here where I will increase the i's value in every iterations. Okay, so what I will do is that I would go ahead and say I plus equals 1. So that means first it check I value is 1, so 1 is less than equals to 5, it print this, then it goes through this second line of code, which is this one, and here what I'm doing, I'm simply adding 1 with this I and storing it back with I. So it's basically going to be 1 plus 1, then I become 2. In the second iterations I become 2, and then it checks, okay, I is kind of 2 is less than equals to 5, and then it kind of again print it, then I is 2, so 2 plus 1 is going to be 3. So then it keeps on going till the time this I becomes a 5, it is going to print it, and as soon as I becomes 6, it is not going to print it. So you will see that this greetings is going to only print for 5 times. Okay, so this is how you will need to control the flow of for loop or while loop. Okay, so for for loop it is very simple. You simply have the list of items which you need to iterate through. Now in while loop you need to use this incremental operators, and you need to make a conditions something like this, which is going to kind of help you to control the loop after doing maybe some of the executions, right? So whatever the requirement you have, right? So let's go ahead and now understand this with some example. We will be solving some problems with both for loop and while loop, the same problems. Okay, then we will see which one is best to choose, how to solve same problem using both the loop. So this concept is going to be very, very clear. Now I want you to just remember these things, that when you use a for loop, it simply iterate through each items, and when you use a while loop, it simply check a conditions. If the condition is true, it is going to execute this code. As soon as the conditions become false, it kind of stop the loop. Basically, it kind of exit the loop, right? So this codes no more execute if in case this condition become false. Okay, it doesn't become false automatically because it will always become true. So you need to kind of do some changes with that, and so that it become a false after some time, right? Depending on your requirement. So let's go ahead and see some problems which we can solve using for loop and while loop to see how to solve same problems with these two. Okay, now all these problems are basically asked in different interviews. Very important concept, as I said, for loop and while loop. So I'm sure once you solve this, you will have a solid understanding between for loop and while loop, and you would be able to pick for loop and while loop depending on the question. Okay, so let's see the first task that I have, which is going to be print number from 1 to 5. Okay, now this may looks very simple, so you already know how to do it, right? So let's go ahead and first of all write it down here. So I'm going to first use a for loop to solve this problem. Okay, now you may know something called range, right? So using a range, you can kind of create a series of numbers starting from 1 to kind of ending to another. All you need to pass the starting and the ending, or you can just pass the ending. Okay, so we need to just print number from 1 to 5. So what I can do is that I can go ahead and simply go ahead and say that for num in range 1 starting from 1 and 5. So last number is not included in range functions. So I can need to say 5 plus 1. Okay. Now if you do not know range function, so range function is going to create a series starting from this to the ending. So the ending number is not included, same as like index. So here I would need to say 5 plus 1, or whatever the ending number plus 1. Okay, so I will now go ahead and simply go ahead and say num. Okay, so basically this range is going to hold something like this. Okay, so if I just go ahead and say create a series like this with the list, so it's going to hold like 1, it's going to hold like 2, it's going to hold like 3, it's going to hold like 4, it's going to hold like 5. All we need is 1 to 5, right? So why I'm saying 5 plus 1, because this range doesn't include the last kind of number, so you need to add additional one, or you can simply use a number in s, right? Both way you get the same answer. Okay, let's go ahead and execute it. If you see, I'm getting 1 2 3 4 5. If you want to do it this way, so instead of this, you can simply go ahead and say I do not want to use this, but I want to use this. I would say num in s, I need to use this colon sign. And if you say, I'm getting the same answer because it simply iterated through each items. Okay, so let's now go ahead and see how to solve the same problem using while loop. All we need to print is 1 to 5. Okay, so first of all, whenever you are using while loop, you need to make a condition, as I have explained earlier, right? So I can simply go ahead and say while, and here I need to put the conditions, right? And this condition must be true, or once the condition is true, then only here I will be able to print the number, right? So first of all, what I need is that I will go ahead and start maybe a number variable equals 1. Okay, why? Because I want the loop to start from 1. So if I say print 1, if this condition is true, it is going to print 1. Okay, so I can just give you an example. I can simply go ahead and say true. Any condition that is true, I can say run it. It's going to print 1, no problem, right? I need to say just num. Okay, sorry, I need to say num here. It's going to print this 1, and it will keep on printing 1 1 forever, right? So that means I need to break somehow this condition. I need to make false as soon as it prints 1 to 5. Now how this 1 is going to become 5? So that means here also I can use incremental operators. Okay, all I need to do is that after printing the 1, I can simply use an incremental operator. So incremental operator, so I would need to increase the number value, right? So I can say num plus equals 1. So here I'm just increasing the number value to 2. Okay, so it's again going to check the condition. Condition is always true, then it print 2. The problem is that it will keep on going, it will never stop, right? All I need to do is that I need to make sure that this conditions become false after we get the desired output that we're looking for, right? So I need to make sure this condition is logical. So what I can do is that I can simply go ahead and say make a conditions like this. Okay, so let's say while this number is less than equals to 5. Okay, while this number is less than equals to 5, I would want to print the number, and then I would want to increase the numbers. Okay, let's try to understand what is happening here. So we are saying what number is 1. Okay, it's simple. I hope it's clear till here. And then as soon as it check the condition while number is less than equals to 5, yeah, that is true because it is 1. So it print the number, we get 1. Okay, then we increase the number by 1 and we save that in the number, so number become 2 now. Okay, then it check 2 is less than equals to 5. Yes, that is also correct. Then it simply print a 2 because the number was a 2 here in the second iterations, right? Then we increase to 3, so on it keeps on going till the time this number become 5. Okay, so as soon as number become 5, we check, okay, 5 is less than equals to 5 because we have used less than equal, so it is obviously condition is still true. We print 5. Then this number becomes 6. Okay, then as soon as it goes to the second condition check in the 6th iterations, and it checks, okay, number is no, this condition is not true because the now number is 6 and 6 is not less than equals to 5. That's how it break the loop. So after 5 iterations we break the loop here. So you need to make sure this condition make a sense. Okay, so we can go ahead and run it. If you see, we got 1 to 5. We have solved same problem using for loop and using while loop. Okay, so if you see, using for loop we have solved this way, and using while loop we have solved this way, right? Here we just had to make a conditions, right? And we had to start from 1. And here what we have done, we have simply created a list, or we could have used range to kind of solve the problem, because here we do not need to create a conditions. All we need a number series, that's it. Either you can use a list or you can use the range functions to create this number series for you. Okay, so let's go ahead and see the next problem. If you get any doubt with any of this problem, let me know in the comment box. So the next is going to be this one, sum of first n numbers. So user is going to add an input, and we would want to do a sum of till that numbers. Okay, so let's go ahead and first of all maybe edit here so I can explain. Okay, so let's say user is going to enter, let's say user is going to enter 5. Okay, so what we want is that we want sum till 5. So starting from 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5, which is going to be 15. Okay, this is what we want to achieve using for loop and using while loop. Okay, now let's go ahead and see how we can achieve this using for loop, and then we will see how we can achieve using while loop. Now all you need to remember is the same thing as I would repeat again. In for loop you have simply the items which you can iterate through. In while loop you need to make a conditions to kind of solve the problem. Okay, so I hope you understood the problem, right? And now let's go ahead and see how we can solve it. Okay, so let's first take an input from the user. So we will say which is called please enter a number to get sum. Okay, so user is going to enter a number. We need to again convert it into int because user input is always considered as a string, and we call it maybe n number. Okay, we call it n. Okay, so user has a user is going to enter this n number. It can be anything. Okay, all we need to sum till that number. Okay, that's our job. So what we can do is that we can go ahead and create a variable here called sum, because we need to store the sum here. Okay, so I would just create a I can say variable with 0. So I'm creating a variable by sum, and I'm storing 0 right now. Okay, so what I will do is that I will say for, and I would say maybe for I in n. Okay, and I would, instead of n, I would use this way. Okay, I'll explain this. Okay, and I would just try to create a series till that number. Okay, so I would say starting from 1, and whatever the user has entered, which is n plus 1. Okay, assuming user has entered 5, so it's going to be 1 to 5 plus 1, which is 6, right? So I will be getting total 5 iterations. First iteration is going to be 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 5, right? So I'm saying I, and this range, if you see, this range is going to hold from 1 to 5, because I'm saying 5 plus 1. Okay, so all I need to do is that here I will need to kind of store the sum now. Okay, before storing the sum, let me show you how the output looks like. If I print it, I get the same things which we have already done earlier. I mean, we need to just print here. Okay, I get the same thing which we done earlier, like printing 1 to 5, because it's the same. If you see, it's the same. Here I just take the input from the users. Okay, so instead of printing it, all I need to do is that I need to store this with the sum. So here, so when I get 1, I would say 1 plus sum equals to 1. Then in the second iteration I get 2, I would say 2 plus sum was 1, so it's going to be 3. Now the sum is 3. Then I say 3. Okay, then I kind of say 3 plus sum was 3, so it's going to be kind of, you can say 6, right? Then I say kind of 4, so 4 plus 6 is going to be 10, and then I say 10 plus 5 is going to be kind of 15. So all we need to do is that we need to store the data in sum. Okay, so we would say sum plus equals what, which is called I. Okay, now here when we do a first iteration, in the first iterations I is what? If you see from this range, I is going to be 1, so we can go ahead and say sum plus equals 1. That means sum is going to become 1 now, right? And then we can just ignore it for now. Okay, cool. Then in the second iteration, the I become 2, and then the sum is already 1. Then we kind of go ahead and say, okay, so 1 plus 1, that's going to be 2. So now sum become 2. Okay, so here this is how it is going to do the job. And because we are kind of storing it here, right, we are using plus equals operator to store the informations in the sum. Okay, so this is what we are doing. So now all I need to do is that after the loop, I would simply need to print the sum, and you will see I will get the result, which is 15. Okay, if I want to check for another number, so I can just run it, maybe kind of 8, and you will see that I get 36. Okay, you can again verify it. So this is definitely correct. Okay, let's go ahead and see how we can solve the same problem using for while loop. Okay, now if you see in for loop, we try to kind of create this range. Based on this range, we have solved it, right? If in case we need to solve the same in while loop, we need to kind of make a conditions, right? So let's say we would simply go ahead and ask this to the users. So user is going to enter this. Now we will need to make a condition. So we will need this while, and the condition is here, and then we will also need to create this empty variable which is called sum. I mean variable with the sum which is having 0. And then here I would need to say the same thing. So I will go ahead and say sum plus equals, which is going to be my the iterators, right? So how I make a conditions, this is where it makes sense. Okay, so let's go ahead and say the iterator is going to be simple I here. So I would just go ahead and say maybe I equals 1. Okay, I can also say I equals 0 also, but I can say I equals 1, and all I need to make conditions here, I can say till the time this I equals is going to be kind of less than equals to 5. Okay, so first I is 1, so obviously it is less than equals to 5, so we kind of sum and add in the sum, so it's going to be sum is becoming 1. Then we need to increase this I to 2. Okay, so same way we need to keep on increasing this I till the time this I become kind of 6. This loop is going to kind of this while loop is going to kind of cancel, because this condition is going to be false, and finally we got all the values stored in the sum. So first we kind of do sum with the 1, then this I become 2, then we again do sum, and then we store that, right? So same way what we have done here I will simply go ahead and say I'm just summing every time with. Now once I get the sum, I would simply need to increase this I value, right? Let me just correct it, and here I will simply go ahead and say that what I will need to do is that I would say I plus equals 1. Okay, so this is done. And here if you see I'm saying I is greater than 5, so I need to say I is less than equals to 5, right? So I is less than equals to, otherwise the condition is going to be false and nothing is going to execute. And here I am increasing the number, right? So I'm increasing the I increasing I value, right? So if you see I value is increasing here. Now if I go ahead and execute it, you will see that it's asking for the number. Let's give it 5. And we don't see anything because we have not printed, so we need to print this sum outside this while loop. Okay, so we can go ahead and say print sum. And if you see giving 5 and we're getting 15, and if I give 8, so I'll be getting 36. If I give 8 and I'll be getting, let's go ahead and give it. Okay, so if I give 8, I'll need to kind of automate it this way. So what I will do is that I would, instead of using 5 here, I need to use this n here, right? So I would say while this I is less than equals to n, because I need to make sure this is dynamic, right? We cannot assume that the user is going to enter kind of 5. So if we say 8, it's getting 36. If I say 5, it's getting 15, right? So the same way here, we just need to create a conditions, and for the condition you need to use an iterator like this. Okay, and in for loop you just need to use maybe the range, or to create a list with all the items. Okay, let's go ahead and see the next task, which is going to be the task number 3. So the task number 3 is again very simple. We just need to print even number using for loop and while loop. Okay, so let's go ahead and see how we can print the even number using while loop and for loop. So let me go ahead and write for loop. So to print even number using for loop, it's very simple. You can simply go ahead and say that, let's say we want 1 to 10, right? So we can go ahead and say for I in range. Okay, and we want 1 to 10 plus 1. Okay, so this is fine. If I just go ahead and print I, you will see it's going to just print 1 to 10, correct? But we want the even number. That means we do not want to include this 1, 3, 5, 7, right? Now there is a two way we can solve this in for loop. One, you can say that, okay, if I is kind of divisible by 2 equals 0, that means what I want is that we would say print I. Okay, so let me explain what I'm saying. If this I is divisible by 2, if I divide this I divide by 2, and if I get the modulus as 0, that means it's an even number. Otherwise, if you divide 3 by 2, it's kind of, there will be modulus with 1, right? So same way, if you divide by 5, modulus is going to be 1. If you divide 4, modulus is going to be 0. So this is one way we are getting 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And the second way, if you want to do it, I will just show you the second way as well. The second way is quite easy. All you need to do is that starting from, instead of starting from 1, we can say start from 2 and goes to 10 plus 1, which is 10. And we can say comma, and here I can implement something called step. Okay, so earlier by default this step was 1, so it first get 1, then 2, then 3, then 4. So here we start from 2 and then we include the step as 2. So 2, 4, 6, so on, right? All you need to do is that here we will just need to say print I. Okay, so you will be getting the same result. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 using for loop. Very simple. We have solved the same problem using for loop. To solve it using while loop, we again need to do the same technique where we will be kind of using conditions, right? So we can go ahead and say start with while loop. So we will say while loop, and here we will need to first consider the number, right? So we will need to maybe create a variable, which we can say number equals kind of maybe 2. Okay, and we can say while, and we will go ahead and say while this number is less than equals to 10. See, we would want 1 to 10, right? 1 to 10, all the even numbers. We are saying while this number is less than equals to 10, because it is always going to be less than equals to 10, because we are storing 2 here, right? And if I store 1 here, let me show it with 1. So I'm just printing from 1 to 10. Okay, so I will go ahead and say print this number, correct? And then I would change the number to plus equals 1, same way we have done right earlier. So it's going to print 1 to kind of 10. All I need to do is that I need to skip this 1, 3, 5, right? If I need the even, so what I will do is that I will go ahead and say that instead of increasing 1, I can increase it by 2. So, and if I increase it by 2, first I'm starting n equals 1, and if I'm going to print 1, and then if I increase number plus 2, so 1 plus 2, that's going to be 3. So I will get 3, then 5, right? So it means from where we're starting, it matters. So if I go ahead and change it to 2, And first I will be getting 2, and then I'm increasing by 2, so it's going to be 4, and then it's going to be 4, and then I'm printing 4, then I'm again increasing 2, so it's going to be 6. So that means we get the results. Okay, so same approach we have used, and if you see, I got the results. Here I have simply implemented this incremental 2, and if you see here, I have used this technique where I have use this step equals a 2. Okay, and the same way we have solved this problem. Let's go ahead and jump to the problem number 4, which will be this one. This is a password checker. So this is very interesting, and I will go ahead and explain it in a very easy way. Okay, so let's go and let's see. So password checker, that means, let's say there's a user, and we have the user password stored in our database. Okay, so we will go ahead and say that maybe user password, what do you have is maybe something like cat123. Okay, this is the password that we have stored, and we would want user to enter the password. If the user enter correct password, we say okay, thank you so much for entering correct password, and we kind of show that message. Till the time user doesn't enter the correct password, we keep asking please enter correct password, please enter correct password. Okay, and we want to solve this using two approach. One is for loop, one is while loop. So all I need to do is that to solve it using for loop, I can simply go ahead and say for, and here I need to kind of first get the password from the users. Okay, so I would say that maybe user password, I would just go ahead and create a variable called password, which user is going to enter, and I can just collect it using input, and I can say please enter password. Okay, and I can simply go ahead and let the user enter the password. And what I want is that I would go ahead and say that for, and here I would go ahead and say that for, and here if you see in for loop, it will only work when we have some iteratable options. And if you see right now, we do not have anything called iterations, so we need to assume that okay, we are going to give us some number of attempts. So that means for this problem, this for loop is not the best options, because we need to assume here how many times we are going to ask the users. If you use a while loop, it will ask for a, but till the time user doesn't answer correctly. So we need to say maybe something called attempts, and I can go ahead and say that I would want to give 5 try to the users. Okay, in 5 try they need to enter the correct password, so that whenever you use a for loop, you must have an iterator, right? So that means how many times, right? So what I will do is that I will go ahead and maybe go ahead and say that maybe something called I in this range, and I would say starting from 1 to attempt plus 1. Okay, so just consider this attempt is the kind of the 5 number that we are giving. We're saying colon, and all I need to do is that if I go ahead and print this I, if you see, this is first I is going to be kind of the 1, and then 2, then 3, then 4, and so every attempt user does, we get the I here, right? 1 to kind of till 5, because we are saying attempt plus 1. Okay, so this is fine, and we do not want to print it. All we want to do is that we would want to check the user is entering a password, is the password is correct, right? So here user has already entered the password previously, which we would check if this password is correct. So what we will do is that we will go ahead and say if the password which user has entered, is it like same with the password that we have stored, right? So if this password equals to the user password which we have stored, if this is a true, here I am comparing. Okay, this is the user entered, and this is we already have stored, right? If this is true, then I can go ahead and say print then correct password, right? So here I'm saying if this is true, then I'm saying correct password, right? And else what? We can go ahead and say else. If this is not true, then what I want is basically I would say incorrect password, try again. Okay, and here I need to collect the password again, so I can go ahead and put this line again. So user enter the password again, and here password become the new password, and then it goes through the loop again. So if you see in this one iterations, first I check if the password is correct, I see okay, else I go here, right? Now the problem is that even if the user enter correct password, it will go through the second times. Okay, and then it will go through the third time. So every time it will keep on asking the user till we have 5 attempts, right? So I need to break this loop. Okay, so what I can do is that I can simply use a break statement here. So I would say kind of if as soon as this condition is true, and this is going to exit the loop. Okay, so that means this is going to kind of break the loop. Let me just go ahead and kind of show you with an example. So let's say we enter cat 124, okay, instead of 3, It's incorrect, so it should ask the password again. Let's see. Incorrect password, try again. You see, it is asking for the password. I can go ahead and say cat123. Let's enter the correct one right now. 123. And if you see, correct password, and it is no longer asking for the password. So all what I have done is that I have controlled the flow here. Okay, what I have done, I have kind of, when you use if else conditions, right, if you see here and it is inside this for loop, so this break is kind of going to break this entire loop. Okay, so till the time user doesn't enter the correct password, this condition is never going to be true, and we do not print it, and we do not kind of break the loop, because it will directly check the password. If the password is the same what we have, it will simply go ahead and break the loop and print this. Before breaking it, we are printing it. It's very important, otherwise it is kind of directly jumping to the else logic. So as many time user is entering incorrect, it will keep on asking till we have 5 attempts. Okay, let's go ahead and see 4, 5, and this is the 4th attempt. This is the last attempt we have. Okay, after the 5 attempt, if you see, it is kind of saying incorrect password, and it is not giving any more attempt. Okay, now the negative point is that here you need to put this attempt manually. So for this, it is not a best options. Let me go ahead and explain this with while loop and how you can make it dynamic. It will keep on asking for forever till the time user doesn't enter the correct password. Okay, so let's assume that let's do these two things are same. Okay, so we'll go ahead and say that, okay, user password which you have stored is 123 cat123, and this is going to ask for the password for the very first time. So all we need to do is that we need to make a conditions. So right now we already have the conditions. We can compare this, and that's going to be the conditions. So here we need to use a negative conditions. Okay, why negative conditions? I will explain. So what I would say that, okay, I would go ahead and say while this password that user has entered is not equals to the password what we have. Okay, so what does it mean? It means this password that user has entered is not equals, because if it is equals, we would not want to continue the loop, right? Because if the user has entered correct password, we do not want the loop to continue, because if the loop continue, it is always going to ask the password, right? So that's the reason we are giving a negative condition here. When it is going to be true, when user is going to enter incorrect password. So that, let's say user password is cat123 and I have entered cat124, so I have entered incorrect password. That means I have, this condition is true here, right? So here we will again ask, please enter sir, please enter again, please enter password. So here I would go ahead and say that, okay, please enter password. So let me just get this line which call please enter, please try again. Okay, so I would go ahead and say here, please try again, and all these things will happen only if the user enter incorrect password. Now if I simply go ahead and say like the previous one, okay, while password equals password, that means here user is already entering correct password, and we do not want this to kind of ask, because then if the user has entered correct password, we do not want user to ask the question, print this incorrect password, try again, right? Which is going to be incorrect, right? So what do you want? As soon as the loop close, we can simply print a message called correct password. Right now if you see, even if the user enter correct password, it is still going to ask incorrect password, enter it again. Let's go ahead and show you. Okay, so I'm saying kind of cat123, which is the correct password, and if you see, it is saying incorrect, and it is again asking the password. Why? Because this condition is becoming true. If this condition is becoming true, these things will keep on asking. It's not going to close the loop till the time this condition doesn't become false. So what we do is that we would be using here negative conditions, right? I would need to stop it, and I would just go ahead and say that not equals to password, right? So here what I'm doing is that I'll close it. Okay, here I'm saying this password not equals to password. That means the password that user has entered, sorry, I need to use this this password, and this password user has entered not equals to this user password, right? So here I need to simply say that, okay, the password that user has entered is not equals to the password that we have stored. That means this condition will be always true till the time user is entering incorrect password. Okay, let's go ahead and see now. Let's again run it again. So first I need to stop it. It's not stopping due to some reason. Okay, let's say interrupt. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and run it again. Okay, so I will enter the incorrect password first to see. So I would say 123 something like this, incorrect password, try again. Okay, so let's go ahead and say cat123. See, as soon as I enter the correct password, it is simply breaking the loop. Why? As soon as you enter the correct password, this password is kind of not equals to this user password is kind of not no longer a valid statement, because this password equals to this password, right? That is the kind of statement. So here this is the reason it is not continuing the loop, and it is kind of simply breaking the loop because this condition is no longer valid, right? And we simply print the next line of code which is outside of the loop. Otherwise this code will never go to this line till the time this kind of statement is kind of valid. Okay, so this is what we have done in the task number 4, and we have solved same problem using both approach, for loop and while loop. Now let's go ahead and see how we can solve this fifth number problems, right? Let's go ahead and create an index call. Let's go ahead and create a string called coding, and we would want to reverse it, right? So it's going to be GNIDOC, right? And let's create a variable called reverse string. So reverse string. Okay, now you cannot use the reverse modules. Okay, so we need to make sure that we are not using the reverse module. So to solve it using for loop, we can simply use a index method. So I would simply go ahead and take out the length of this s, and if you see, it's going to be 6 because we have 6 characters including this space here. We don't have any space right now, and I can create a variable called maybe index, and I can save it, right? So all I need is that, see, whenever I'm using a for loop, I would need an iterator. So I can go ahead and say that for I in a range of this 1 to index plus 1. Okay, now here all I need to access is going to be this g, because I want to reverse it. So if I need to access this g, so what I would do is that I would say s of what? So it's going to be 0th index 1 2 3 4 5, right? So that's going to be my 5, but I have length which is 6. So what I can do is that if I say s of this length which I have like index, which I have named it as an index. So if you see, s of index is going to be what? So s of index is going to be kind of the 6 items which I do not have it, right? So I would need to minus it 1 from here. Okay, so right now I will be able to access, if you see, I will be able to access, if I minus 1 from here, this index, now I will be able to access this g, right? So first I access the g, and what I can do is that after accessing it, I can go ahead and store the data which is g. So what I will do is that I would store it in here, and I would say reverse string plus equals, and I can use simple this. So this is going to store the g. Okay, once this is done, I need to decrease the index number. So I can go ahead and say index, and I would say minus equals 1. So I am reducing 1. So that means now this index is going to be what? So the index is going to be instead of 6, it's going to be kind of 5, right? So again, then I'm decreasing the index. So instead of index 6 here, if you see, this is a 6, right? Let's write it down. It's kind of 6, right? So now index is 6, so I'm decreasing it to kind of 5. So we have the index 5 here. 5 minus 1, that's going to be 4. So this is our 4th, right, item. This is our 3, this is our kind of 2, this is our 1, this is our 0th index, right? So this is how we get the data stored, and I can now print this reverse string. At the same time, we are storing the data. If you see, instead of just printing it here, I'm storing it here. If you wanna if you want me to print it, so I can print this this iterators, and you will see the data how it is happening. Okay, we got GNIDOC, right? And this is the reverse string. Okay, so we have solved using for loop in this approach. Let's go ahead and see if in case I need to solve using while loop, what is going to be my approach, right? So for while loop, it is going to be super easy. So what you need to do is that we will go ahead and start the same index. So I will say index equals this, and I will need this variable also, which will be reverse, because I would be saving this data in the reverse order here. And I will need, which is going to be the index. So index is 6. So let's go and let's say how we can solve it using while loop. So we can go ahead and say while. So we can say while, and we need to say this while this index is kind of greater than equals to 0. Okay, because in the 0th index we would want our while loop to stop. Okay, and what we will do is that we will say while this index is kind of greater than equals to 0, what do you want to do, right? So we would want to perform the same thing here. Okay, whatever we have done earlier, so we are going to perform the same thing. Okay, so first the index, if you see, this index is kind of 6, so obviously that is greater than 0. So 6 minus 1 is going to be 5, and 5 of s is going to kind of get me the g, right? And then I would simply go ahead and kind of if you see, I store the data in the reverse string, so g, which I get, and then I reduce the index from kind of 6 to 5, and 5 minus 1, then I get the next, right, the before that. So this is how I get the result, and I can simply go ahead and say print of reverse index, and if you see I will be getting the same result. And if you see, this is how it is happening. Okay, in the first iteration I get G, then N, then I get I, then D, O, C, G. Okay, this is how we have solved the problem, and I hope this video was helpful. If you found this video helpful, like the video and do subscribe to my YouTube channel if you have not yet subscribed to stay updated with such content. Have a good day. See you next time. Take care. Bye bye.